Okay, my name is Marilyn Elm, Marilyn Elm. I was born in Menasha in a house.
Okay, could you tell me who your parents are?
Mr. and Mrs. Sadie King, William King and Sadie King.
Okay.
They were from Menasha, but he was originally, I think he was born in Oneida, and my mother was too, but they eventually moved to Menasha.
Did you know your grandparents then?
Yes. My dad's mother's name was Sarah King, and her husband's name was, I think it was Charlie. And my mom, her mom's name was Elizabeth, and her husband's name was John King. She was a King before she got married.
Do you know what her mother's maiden name was?
Her mother?
Mm-hmm.
Gee, you mean my grandma's mother?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, no.
No, your grandma.
Oh,
what her maiden name was, yeah.
Gee, I can't remember that. Shirley probably knows. I don't remember that.
What about your grandfather's side? I mean, your father's side.
I can't I think her name was Smith. Her name was Sarah Smith. I'm almost positive. So.
What was your grandfather, John? What was his last name?
King. See, my mom was a King, but they were not related. So she never had to change her name.
Good for her.
Once a king, always a king.
Do you know where your grandparents were born?
I think my mom and dad, my grandparents were born out to Oneida here, I think. I know my grandma went to, what do they call those schools? All Indian school?
Mm-hmm.
And she used to speak the Oneida language, and they weren't allowed to speak that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it was way, way before my time. But I don't know where my dad's mom and dad went to school. I know my grandma was a school teacher, Sarah.
Oh.
She was an English teacher.
Do you know where she taught?
I couldn't tell you. I knew she did that. But my other grandparents, my grandma never worked. She was a very good Christian lady. She went to St. Thomas Episcopal Church in Menasha, and that's where I was brought up. And I used to go to church with her when I was little and stay overnight with her. I can still remember that. She used to always braid her hair at night before we went to bed, and she took me all over with her. That's how I can remember her so well. But my other grandma, Sarah, she was such a loving grandma. Every time we'd go over there, she'd always have to give us a big hug. And compared to my other grandma, was very quiet, more so. But they were both wonderful grandparents. I never did get a chance to meet my dad's dad because he died before I was, I must have been maybe 3 or 4 years old. And then the other one, my other grandfather, my dad's dad, he died when I was born.
Oh.
So I never even got a chance to meet him. But I used to hear a lot about him.
Mm-hmm. And you've always lived in Menasha and Appleton?
Well, we lived in Oneida for about 6 months. And my mom got scared out here one time. We used to live right where, you know where Chester Smith lives, in that intersection there, mm-hmm. coming this way? Mm-hmm. And that, it used to be a corner house there. Do you remember that years ago? It had a big port. Well, that's where we used to live.
Oh, you lived there?
Oh, we lived there for 6 months, and my mom and dad had gone away, and they come home, and there was a man pounding on our back door. And my mom got so scared, and she asked, who are you? Who are you? And he didn't answer. And he walked down the hill, just like, she thought it was like a ghost.
Oh.
So it wasn't long, and we went back to Menasha. So then we lived there the rest of our lives. Of course, then we moved to Appleton later on.
Did your mother and father both work?
My mom did housework. My dad worked at the Menasha Woodenware, but my mom did housework.
How many years did he work in?
Oh gosh, he worked there. Before he got in a car accident, then he got cancer. I'd say he was there about, maybe I'm wrong, maybe 30 years.
Did he retire from there then?
Well, he had to for medical reasons.
After 30 years?
Yeah, I think it was. I'm not sure, Lois, but I think it was something like that.
Yeah. What about your family? Do you have any children?
Oh, Sarah and Scotty. Sarah graduated from Eau Claire with honors. She was on the dean's list 4 years, which we were very proud of her. She graduated with honors, and it was kind of a touching thing when we went to her graduation. Lem was alive then, and we got to Lem went earlier because I had to stay with Scotty because he was in a track tournament. So he went ahead, and that morning when Sarah was getting ready for her graduation, she come and talked to us. She had her cap and gown on, and she had this gold thing on her neck, and I said to her, Sarah, I said, what's that for? She said, I was going to surprise you. She said, I'm graduating with honors. That was just kind of got me. But anyhow, and then Scotty, he went to Stevens Point for a while. And then we had to take him out that first half. But then he ended up going to the tech, and he's in graphic design with graphic arts. But right now he's laid off. You know how the work situation is. So he's laid off, and he was trying to see if he can get a job with the tribe, but I don't know if they're hiring or what the deal is. That's why he's going to go to Human Resources while I'm in here to see what he can do.
Can you tell us a little bit about your husband? Who he
Oh,
was?
Lemmy Elm. Well, we were married for, I think, 33 years. I can't even remember now when I think back. But anyhow, he was an iron worker, local aide out of Milwaukee. And well, he grew up in Oklahoma. His mom had his aunt and uncle take him in Oklahoma. He was only like 7 or 8 years old, and that's where he grew up. And then he left there. When he was 16, he joined the Merchant Marines, and then he went to a welding school. And that's where he got his training. And then after that, he joined the Navy. And then I think he moved back to Milwaukee. And of course, he got married, and they divorced. And then him and I started going together, and we got married. And we settled in Appleton then. But he never wanted to move out to Oneida here. I said to him, do you want to move out there? He said, no, I'd rather stay here. Him and his mother never really got along that well. And I think it was because he was shipped to Oklahoma, because he always said that. He said, I don't know why I had to go. But he never did forgive her for that, and I'm sorry to say, but that's what happened, because he said, oh, I think more of your mom and your mother than I did of my mother. So it's just too bad.
Yeah. Did your mother and dad go to government schools at all?
My mother did, I think. But I don't think my dad did. My dad had tuberculosis when he was younger. And his mom made him take like an office course in school, like a commercial course. Mm-hmm. So he'd learn how to type and do office work in case when he got older that this tuberculosis would come back, and he'd have a hard time working in a mill. But it never did. But he did end up working in a mill anyhow.
Do you know where your mother went to school at?
I couldn't tell you. I know she did go to a government school, but I can't remember where it was.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about when you were growing up, how your parents were, what they did, and how your mother cooked and stuff, or did she use any herbs?
No, my mom never used any herbs. In fact, we used to have corn soup, but my grandma used to make it. And my mom never learned how to make it. And, she was a good cook, though. But she worked all the time and did housework, and when us kids would come home from school, we'd start our meals for her, so she wouldn't have to do all that. And, we used to go on a lot of trips when we were kids. I remember my dad would say on Sunday morning, okay, get up, we're all going away, get dressed. And my mom would pack a picnic. I remember that one time especially, we went to Wisconsin Dells. We had such a wonderful time there. We went with one of their friends and their kids. Oh, we had such a good time. Then another time we went to Milwaukee Zoo. I remember that day. But we would always have fun together, but it just happened that alcohol kind of took over their life after a while. And my parents divorced, and it's kind of a sad thing, but then my dad ended up with cancer, but we used to have a lot of fun together. I'm just so sorry my other sisters, Sandra and Barbara and Celine, never knew the joy we had when we were younger, because my dad and mom were good then. I mean, they didn't drink much, and we used to have fun then, but that alcohol took over, and that was a bad thing.
And how many sisters and brothers do you have?
I have 4 sisters and 2 brothers. Excuse me. My brother lives in Albuquerque, my older brother.
What's his name?
Bill King. And he retired from the Air Force, and he was with the BIA for many years. And then he was with the FBI for many years till he retired. And his wife was from Germany. He married her while he was in the service, and they had 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, and their kids are all well-educated, college degrees, except for the 1 boy. And my brother Seelan, he's an iron worker also, and he has his own business out here. I don't know if you heard of it, Standing Stone Construction, and he's doing very well. And he had a problem with alcohol too, but he got over it, and he's doing just wonderful, which we're all proud of. And then my sister Sandra, she lives in Menasha, and she married Tim Gauze. He has his own business, Gauze Auto Body in Menasha, and they have a terrific business there. And now her son has taken over. So Timmy just goes there part-time and makes sure the shop is going well. And then my sister Barbara, she lives with me. She works at Anchor Foods. And of course, Shirley and Mark. Mark was an iron worker too. And Shirley graduated from Oshkosh in later years, which we're proud of her. And then me. I graduated from Menasha High School, and I worked in several paper mills. And I retired about 7 years ago only because I fractured my knee, and I could have worked, but every time I'd come home from work, I was in such pain, I thought, I'm going to retire. Then, of course, Lem died in '89, so I was lucky enough to retire early because I had a little money that I could afford to retire early. And then, of course, I got a big his pension, and so I probably would have kept on working if it wasn't for that. But he left me well off. Not a real millionaire, but at least I have money that I don't have to worry about for a while.
We're going to stop right there and change tapes.
Okay. Let's see. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about your grandparents on your father's side. Do you remember any of his brothers or sisters?
John, let me see. I think he had a brother by the name of is it? No, that's on my mother's side. I was thinking about my cousin Jenny's father, Reuben. I think that's on my mom's side. I can't remember my grandfather's, any of his brothers because I was so young. I think I was only like 4 or 5 years old. But I remember him. I think he was from Canada. I mean, that's the original, where he was from. Or either it was my grandma, his wife. Because I know there's there's Canadian on that side. Because they're both very light complected and they both have blue eyes. So I don't know, I don't think they're full.
Did your father have any brothers or sisters?
My dad?
Yeah.
Oh, yes. He had a brother by the name of Grafton. He was killed in a car accident when he was about 23 years old. And then he has a brother by the name of Francis. He died about 42 when he had leukemia. And Pauline, she lived in Sun Prairie. She passed away also. And, you see now, I think that was it.
What about your mother? Did she have any sisters?
My sister, yeah. She had a sister by the name of Lucy. But she was killed in this same car accident as this Grafton was. And she had a brother by the name of Art King, George King, Reuben King, that's where that came in, Reuben, and LaFront King, and Isaac King.
Oh, she had a big, large
Yeah,
family too.
she did. But I remember most of them that I can think of.
Okay. Do you know how your parents met? Did they ever talk about how they met?
No, not that I recall. They never, my parents were different. I mean, they were loving parents, but they never showed their affection in front of us. Because I remember one time I walked in the kitchen, my dad had his arm around my mom. She said, "Quit it." She said, "Somebody's coming here." But that's the way they were. But I mean, they were really loving parents, but they weren't the loving kind. But I knew that they loved us. But they weren't the huggy kind, like I'm saying. But they were good parents. They taught us right from wrong, that's for sure.
Were your parents quite healthy when they were younger?
Oh, yes. Except for my dad. Well, like I said, they thought he had tuberculosis, but he must have outgrew it. But neither one of them were ever sick. In later years, they were. My mom, she died of kidney failure. And of course, my dad died of cancer and heart trouble. But other than that, they were real healthy when they were young, as far as I can remember.
Did your parents ever belong to any organizations or anything?
Oh, my dad belonged to the 25-year Century Club at the Menasha Wood where he worked. But my mom never belonged to anything.
Were they ever in any tribal organizations?
Oh, no.
No?
Mm-mm.
Were they active with the tribe at all?
I don't think so.
No.
Because I hate to say it, but we were brought up in a white community, and we didn't know much. In fact, I don't know that much about the tribe at all. I wish I did know more, but we weren't brought up that way. So I'm just sorry to say that, but that's the way it was.
Yeah. Did your father do any hunting or anything?
No.
No, he wasn't the outdoor.
No, he wasn't.
At all.
Mm-mm.
Did he have any kind of other hobbies?
My dad? No. Not that I can remember.
Is there anything else that you can tell me about yourself?
Me?
Yeah.
Well, I was brought up in Menasha, went to Menasha High School. I was a cheerleader in my younger years. I was very active in sports, swimming, baseball, all those sports. And I had a lot of girlfriends, 4 or 5 girlfriends. And we were all go to the movie, and things very different from what they do now. And we used to have a lot of fun and go ice skating and sleighing and have barbecues. And I don't know, that it's too bad the generation isn't like it was years ago. Because it was clean fun. It wasn't drinking and smoking and drugs like they do nowadays, but it was good, clean fun. It was fun. And the parents my friends had, none of them were drinkers, which I enjoyed very much. We'd go to their house and I'd have dinner over there, and they were such nice families, very religious families. And my mom and dad weren't very religious. And my dad was an usher in church, like at Christmas time or something like that. But I've gotten quite involved in my church. I'm a cellist bearer at our church, and I'm on the altar guild. And I was just voted in for the vestry in our church, which makes me very proud. Father Patrick called and asked me if I'd be interested, and I said, well, I'm not much for meetings. Well, he said, I'm not either. So I said, well, I'll give it a try. He said, how long do I have to serve? Well, he said, 3 years. I said, well, Father Patrick, why don't I just try for 1 year and see if I do well, then I'll continue on. So he said, that's fine. So I have my first meeting in the middle of February, and I'm kind of nervous to see what's going to go on there, but I'm sure I'll do well.
And which church was that?
All Saints Episcopal Church in Appleton.
In Appleton?
Mm-hmm.
Do they have an Indian priest there too?
Well, it was Deacon Johns, but he retired. Russ Johns, you remember him?
Yeah.
I think he's getting Alzheimer's. I'm not sure. But he would preach sometime, and he'd repeat what he was saying, and it was getting so obvious that I think our congregation started to complain about it. And so then he went on like part-time, and now he fully retired. They're having, in fact, Sunday they had a little commemoration for him for his full retirement. But he's been there for a long time. It's too bad it had to hit him like that.
What's the earliest thing that you can remember about your childhood?
Well, I'll tell you one thing I remember very clearly. We lived in Menasha at the time, and I had gotten a little kitty, and we were all playing around in the house, and I took that, and then we had a little shoebox. I don't remember how big it was, but there was a little hole in this shoebox, and it was just big enough for that kitty's head to fit in there. And I took that cat and I put that head in that hole, and they couldn't get it out. They had to break the shoebox to get the kitty out of there. I remember that just like it was yesterday. Oh gosh, and what other things do I? Then we used to go tobogganing when my dad was alive, sleighing. But I remember one time when we were living out to Oneida here, where I told you where we lived by Chester Smith's in that corner. We were out sliding one night, and right below there was that I don't know, one of those little bridges, a culvert.
Oh.
And we were going down that hill, and Shirley said, "Roll off, we're going to hit that culvert." And instead I rolled off and I went right through a barbed wire fence, and I scratched my face all up. It was all terrible. I never had stitches, but I still got a little scar here and on the tip of my nose from that, and I never forgot that. I must have been about 9, 10 years old that time. But we used to have so much fun sliding there. And then another thing, I used to bowl when I was younger. I bowled on 3 bowling leagues. I scratch bowler. I did very good in bowling. My average was around 179, and Shirley and I bowled on the same team. And we used to have a lot of fun bowling. And that one time I fell and I fractured my head, and I had a skull fracture. Well, I couldn't bowl, but it would just kill me to go down there and watch them bowl, and there I was sitting watching them. But we bowled for many years, and Shirley was a good bowler too. In fact, we took championships, I don't know how many years in a row, but it was fun.
What kind of a house did you grow up in?
What kind of, we had several. This one in Baraboo, my dad moved us down to Baraboo one time. He was working at that powder plant down there. I don't know if anybody's familiar with that in Baraboo. But we had a little cabin, and it was terrible. It was in the wintertime. It was so cold we could see outside the slats in this cabin, and we were almost froze to death. And that's where we spent our Thanksgiving. And of course, we had a ring of bologna for our Thanksgiving dinner. And well, eventually, and then we had to go potty outside. That was another thing, which we weren't used to doing. You had to go potty outside, and it was freezing cold. But we survived. Then we ended up back in Menasha. And then in Menasha, we lived with my grandma for a while until we found a house. And then we moved on Kaukauna Street, and that's where we stayed. Then, of course, in our younger days, we lived on State Street, where I told you about that little kitty. Mm-hmm. And then we moved to Kaukauna Street after we left my grandma's house. And we stayed there until we moved to Appleton. And I must have been in my 20s when we moved to Appleton then. So then we moved on College Avenue. That's where we lived until I got married. So.
Did you have chores and stuff to do when you
Chores? Yes. We used to have to do cleaning every Saturday. And to this day, I still do my cleaning on Saturday. Somebody always asks, well, why do you have to do it on Saturday? I said, I'm so used to doing that. Every Saturday we had to do our work, at home. Mm-hmm. And we were scrubbing the floors and cleaning the toilet and all that stuff. And we learned good because my mom was a housekeeper. She did that, like I said, for a living. And we knew all the things that we're supposed to do right. So, and to this day, my daughter she does the same thing because I taught her the same thing that I did. Every Saturday is cleaning day. And her husband always says to her, well, Sarah, why do you always have to clean on Saturday? Well, she says, I was brought up that way. I can't help it. That's the way I was brought up.
How was your Christmases when you were a child?
Well, it was very sad. I hate to say this, but this was during their drinking time. And every Christmas, I always think about them. Because at one time we got up and they had been drinking all night long. I hate to say this, but this is the truth. We got up and they were gone to the tavern. So we had to open up our gifts by ourselves, and I'll never, never forget that. And I swore to that day, my kids were never going to have to live through alcohol during the Christmas time. And I can't help but bring that up every Christmas. In fact, I just brought it up this past Christmas. And Shirley said, well, I don't remember that. I said, I do. I said, how could you forget something like that? And of course, well, as the years went on, it got better. And then, of course, after I married Lem, you know, he had that drinking problem too. And I told him, I says, I don't want that drinking at Christmas time. I said, any other time you can do that, but not at Christmas. But when he did, he came out to Oneida here and stayed overnight by his mom's house. Because I said, I don't want that, because I grew up with that. I don't like that. But after a while, our Christmases got better. But, you know, if that stuff stays in your mind, it's just like yesterday. I could just see that Christmas morning. But I guess that's probably everybody has, not everybody, but probably some people have the same problem as I had when it comes to drinking.
Yeah.
They all have those bad experiences. And that's something that never goes away.
Did you play any childhood games? Did you have special games that you played?
Oh, we used to play bingo. And we used to play this one game called Pig. I don't know if you ever played that. I don't know, you deal the cards and then you get a certain number and you quick grab the spoon or you hit your nose. We used to all play that when my dad and my mom were together. We used to have a lot of fun with that. And then, of course, we played bingo, which was a familiar thing. Even today, we still play bingo. But now we play for money in our house. We all get together, our family all get together and we all play bingo. So, but any other games? Oh, we used to play, when I was a little kid, we used to play kick the can, hide and seek, all those, you know, funny little games kids play nowadays. And that's about all I can remember.
Did you ever do anything on New Year's, like Hoyan or anything like that?
No.
Are you familiar
Oh,
with
my
Hoyan?
mother did. Yeah, my mother used to bake donuts at Hoyan at New Year's. That's another time my dad was in his bad streak. I'm telling you, it's terrible. That alcohol is just awful. It just makes me feel so bad when I think about that stuff. But he came home that night and my mom was baking those donuts and he took that dough and he threw it right up to the ceiling and I'll never forget it. And she got so mad at him and, well, then she made a new batch of dough, but after a while he settled down. But she used to make donuts for Hoyan.
Did people come over to your house?
Oh yeah, our relatives, like my grandma, my grandmas used to come over and her kids, but it wasn't no, you know, a big celebration.
Yeah.
So.
Did you ever celebrate like Easter and 4th of July?
Oh yes, 4th of July was wonderful when my dad was. That's in his younger days. We would get up real early in the morning. He'd have all the firecrackers ready. He was just like a little kid himself. And he'd get all the firecrackers ready and we'd have a real nice time. That was when he wasn't drinking yet. I said, you know, it's too bad. He couldn't have stayed that way because he was a good dad. Well, he even was after he was drinking, but he'd get ornery when he was drinking. But he was really good at that firecracker stuff. And then at night we'd have a big bonfire and roast wieners and marshmallows. And Easter time was always good. Of course, we all went to church on Easter. But they, like I said, they weren't much for church. But both my grandmas were very, very good church members.
That's where you got it from.
Is it? They were very excellent. They were wonderful, wonderful women.
Is there anything that we missed about your childhood?
Not that I can think of. I don't know.
Now that you're an elder, what do you think of the elder society?
Oh, I think it's just wonderful. I think they treat the people so good out here. And you know, some people don't realize how lucky they are to be living out here. Of course, with me living in the city, there's a lot of things that I can't get because I'm out of the boundary from the tribe. But that's okay. I manage okay. But it's people really need help out here. The ones, I mean, I can, you know, do things for myself where a lot of people out here, they can't. And I'm just happy for what they do for everybody else. And and I think excuse me, and that health center for the elderly is just wonderful. I went on a tour there Saturday, and oh my goodness, these people should be I'm so proud of our tribe, how much they've done. And that health center is just beautiful. Have you gone in it?
I've been on a tour of it.
And everybody should be so grateful, but they do very good for the elderly out here. It's just wonderful. More so than they ever did, I think.
Let me see, what did we miss? What about the younger people of today? What would you tell them to do?
Well, for one thing, they should learn how to get along with each other better, especially with religions and races, and especially the alcohol. If they would only see how much damage that alcohol and the drugs can do. It's just, I saw a movie last night, and I said to my sister, boy, they should show that movie to the high schools, how this girl took an overdose of drugs. And they don't realize what that does to their body. And I know my son has an alcohol problem. He's getting better now, but I've talked to him so many times until I'm blue in the head. But I think he's finally opening up and realizing what it does. And if the young people could only see that, if they'd ever experienced going through like I did in my childhood, to see and I drank myself. I'm not saying I'm not perfect either, but I never went overboard. I always thought of my kids first before I overdid anything, and I've always been pretty careful. So anyway, but I think these young kids should realize that drug business is the worst thing. Well, alcohol too.
Are you familiar with the tribal government at all?
No.
You don't go to any tribal meetings?
Once in a while I do. I go to the business meetings sometime. I go with Shirley and Mark. But I'm sorry to say there's another thing that I'm guilty of.
What do you think the term of senior citizen?
Oh, I don't mind that. I think some people are so ashamed that they're a senior citizen. I think that's great. I mean, you can't do nothing about it anyways. You're a senior citizen, and you might as well just admit that you are. But I know that one day we had stopped at a store, and this lady said, she said, we have senior citizen days on Thursday. I said, you do? I said, how do you know I'm a senior citizen? Well, she said, I'm just guessing. But that doesn't bother me. What can you do about it? You're a senior citizen, and I don't mind.
What do you think about the education of the children today?
You mean out here?
Well, in general, with the Indian themselves.
Well, I think it's getting better. Because I know when I was going to school, I was the only Indian in my school. And I used to get called names. But now, there's so many different races that I think it's gotten a lot better. But I think the education is going better. I know my sister-in-law is a teacher. And I think she teaches 3rd grade. But she said, some of these kids that come to school, you can tell they don't have much guidance with their parents. She said, you can just tell which ones can go ahead and do their work and which ones that lay back and don't do it. You can tell that the ones that are really guided good, you can tell the way their appearances are. But I think the education is good, but I don't know, they don't teach much about the Native Americans like they should, I think. Because even with me, when I was growing up, I never knew much about it, and I was one myself. But I think they should stress this more in school. And then they always think that Indians are savages and that. But they're not. They have to realize that way back it was. But if they'd only teach them more in school about the Native Americans, I think it would be a lot better.
Well, I think we've just about covered everything, Marilyn. But I want to thank you for participating in this.
I appreciate it.
Tape.
Well, anytime I can be of any assistance, I'd be glad to help anybody.
Okay.
But I'm just so glad I'm involved in my church. That's the main thing. I think that's helped me get along, and even with Lem's death, that the good Lord up above helped me. So, well, thanks a lot for having me.
Thank you. Did I miss any?